Okay, this video is about data distributions. So we've been leading up to data distributions. We've been talking about different kind of distributions in data, but in particular, we haven't been talking about how they're shaped or that kind of information, and that's where we're starting about the shape of the data distributions. So the distributions do come in all kinds of shapes and forms. Just some different shapes that you may encounter, or some that kind of look like this. Another one might be bimodal, where it has two little humps in it. You might have a distribution that is very high in the middle and then comes down. It might even cross the x-axis. You might have a distribution that curls on each end, but there are all kinds of shapes that you will see with different distributions. So when we talk about a distribution, we want to narrow down the look of the distribution and focus on what we call a normal distribution. Compared to what we call a skewed distribution. Now, when we have a normal distribution, that means that your mean and your median and your mode all line up in the middle. If it's skewed, these items do not line up in the middle. So you might have one that is more centered to the right side, or one that's more centered to the left side, and that's going to make the median fall more to the right versus being in the middle of all the data, where this one is falling right in the middle and it splits the data half and half. So that's the difference between a normal distribution and a skewed distribution. But we talk about the differences between them. This normal distribution, we often describe the shape as being a bell curve. This bell curve doesn't actually touch the x-axis, where sometimes in these skewed distributions, sometimes they will touch the axis or cross the axis, and they have different kinds of shapes when they do that. So that's one of the characteristics of a normal distribution, and it may touch the axis over here in a skewed distribution. It has the highest point in the center. And here the highest point is not in the center. The mean, median, and the mode is in the center. We said that, and here the mean and the median and the mode are not in the center. Even with a box and whisker plot, sometimes you can see that the data is skewed with box and whisker plots. So in a normal box and whisker plot, your median is drawn right in the middle. The whiskers are the same length on each end, whereas in a skewed data set, The median is off to one side, and the whiskers are not the same length. So even with box and whisker plots, you can see a skewed data set with box and whisker plots. So some names for these other distributions that you might be familiar with. We have a uniform distribution, and that just means that all the data is exactly the same height, same width, all looks the same. This data that has a long tail on the left side is called skewed left. And if the long tail is on the right, then it is skewed right. The same thing with the box and whisker plots, depending on which has the long whisker. This would be a skewed left box and whisker. And this is a skewed right box and whisker. So this is just looking at the different kinds of distributions and being able to recognize those particular types of graphs and knowing that everything is not a nice and simple, uniformed, normal distribution.